I'm super excited about this. This is the first time we've ever done boot camp. I'm excited about it. So excited. All right, I see Sarah has joined us. Very good. Yep, we'll just give a couple more minutes for everyone to get in. See if we have any more coming on. So if you'll just hang out for a minute or two, we'll get started. While we're waiting, just a couple questions for you all, for those who are already on. Do you have any questions at all? What do you hope to get out of this? Again, this is our very first time doing this. Some of the information I know is going to be review for a lot of you, but we're going to go through some things and hopefully discuss some best practices on ways of doing things. Again, that's probably going to be review for some of you. But I want your honest feedback, and I want your honest and constructive criticism. I may even have a survey. I don't know if I have time to do one. I may even have a survey at the end, just so you all can give feedback. But are there any questions or things you're expecting or hoping to get out of this? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. Really? No expectations?
I don't really have anything specific, but I just hope to gain more knowledge. Like with everything I come to, just learn something new that can benefit me and my clients in the future.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca, for that. Anybody else?
I was just excited to get to see your pretty face.
Lauren, thank you. And by the way, I did pay her to say that. I'm only kidding.
I do love seeing you. I never get to see you much, so I do love getting to interact with you.
I know. Well, thank you, Lauren, for that. Likewise. And by the way, I love the photo there that you have, the pic of you. Love that. So thank you. I'm so excited to have everybody here. Again, like I said, it's going to be review for the majority of you. For a lot of you, it's going to be review. However, we're going to talk about some best practices and some ways to do things. And, we're going to learn, all of us, especially how those who are already producing, how you do things and what we can pick up from each other. All right, well, it's 10:07 and we got quite a few here. I do believe some are still coming in, which is fine. So again, welcome to our very first B.I.C boot camp. And I'm going to be quite honest, I don't know that I like the term B.I.C in front of it. I guess they called it B.I.C because the B.I.C is doing it, but it's mainly going to be about compliance. We're going to talk compliance things. I know everybody's excited about compliance, and I know it can sometimes be a little boring. However, we're in this great state of North Carolina, and we have a North Carolina real estate license. So there are some things that we need to learn and do and make sure we're in the habit and practice of. So that's why we're having this. And I believe we all can learn, myself included, in this. All right, any questions or anything before we get started? I'm just going to jump right in because I do not believe in wasting time. And if we can get through things and if we can get through some things and maybe even give you some time back, I am certainly happy to do that. Right now, we're scheduled to go from 9 until 12, but who knows? If you all are super listeners, we may be able to wrap up prior to then. No questions at all? Okay. And no expectations still? All right, well, let's do it, everybody. So I am going to share my screen and let you all know what we're going to be doing today. Okay, can everyone see my shared screen there? That says Keller Williams Central Boot Camp. And this was specifically targeted for new agents, because one thing we've done, we used to have what is called Big Hour. And in that Big Hour, we would talk about different issues, different situations and things agents are going through. But then we took a slight turn to talk about the different forms and compliance things that we need to do and make sure we're covered or cover when we are meeting with our clients. We took another slight turn and we stopped that portion of it and turned it into what we now call Glad You Asked, which is on Thursdays at 1 o'clock. And that is for any agent at all who has issues, concerns, or want to ask questions, talk about things. But myself and Tiffany, we go through different issues and different questions and scenarios and situations that we've come across with the agents of our market center. And when we come across different issues and things, we believe we can all learn from them and everyone can benefit. So we'll talk about those things and bring up several topics that we've seen within the market, within our industry, and certainly within our market center. So because we went away from the regular Big Hour, we combined it all into one boot camp that is 1 week long. So as we're going through this boot camp, we'll talk about different things daily. So we're going Monday through Thursday. And I actually have a electronic package that I'd like to send everyone. So at the end, I want all of you to, and I'll ask for this, to put your email addresses that you would like for this information to be sent to in the chat, and I will get out the electronic copy of the forms and documents that we'll be going through. Any questions so far before we jump right in? All right, I don't want you all to be shy. This is going to be very informal. So if you have questions, feel free to raise your hand, put it in the chat. And if I miss it, just get my attention. Of course, you can just interrupt me. I don't have any problems with that if something is not clear or if I need to bring more clarity to what we're discussing. All right, again, this is a compliance training. I know not the sexiest topic ever. Nonetheless, we have to be in compliance for North Carolina and for North Carolina Real Estate Commission, and of course, for Keller Williams compliance as well. So over these 4 days, we will have different camps. And I will tell you, my son does this every time. He FaceTimes me when I'm on Zoom. Just a second. All right, so first day, which is Monday, today, Camp 1, we're going to talk about listings and the different forms and forms that are required for listings and how we as agents can present this to our sellers. We're going to be talking about the WWREA, the listing agreement, the seller net sheet, and disclosures. Tomorrow, which is Camp 2, we will cover the buyer side, the buying side. Of course, several documents there that are required. Of course, the Working Real Estate Agents brochure, buyer agency, and heritage title, which is something that is required per our Keller Williams office. Camp 3, which is Wednesday, we will talk about contracts. We got the listing or we got the buyer. Now let's talk about the fact that it's under contract and what takes place from there and just some expectations during the transaction while it's under contract. And Camp 4, which is Thursday, we will discuss policies and procedures, what the local office policy is, as well as how it overlays or overlaps with KWRI policies. All right, any questions about what we will be covering over the next few days together. Okay, I've seen some more faces come on. Again, thank you everyone for joining us here today. All right, so today we'll be discussing the listing side. So the things that we will be talking about and actually going over and reviewing is the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure. We will discuss the exclusive right to sell listing agreement, the seller estimated net sheet, and seller disclosures. Okay. All right. Is anybody excited about the new Working with Real Estate Agents brochure other than me? I know I can't see your faces, so if you feel like you want to chime in, and maybe you're nodding and I just don't see it. And that's all right too. But I tell you, I really love the new Working Real Estate Agents brochure because it is much clearer than before. It's very simple. And the thing is, we review, explain what it is, and we can actually let the client have the actual brochure. We just need to get their acknowledgement for the disclosure that we've actually reviewed it with them. I'm really excited about that. So let me stop sharing. Well, no, I won't go into that. Yeah, I think I'm going to go here first. So let's talk about this. When it comes to the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure, there's two portions now. The North Carolina Real Estate Commission did an awesome job with splitting out the information. There's a question and answer brochure, and then there's the seller disclosure portion of it. And we'll talk about the different sections and what's required when we get that sign. Typically, or in the past, it was just one brochure. The seller just signed saying we covered it and just acknowledging that we did. But now they've broken it up and it actually explains the different categories that could apply to this particular seller. So we'll go over those items and then we'll get into the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Any questions so far? Comments? Feel free. Okay, so let's look at this Working with Real Estate Agents, just the brochure portion. Okay. Love how it looks now. It is much more concise. It is in layman's terms, which I really like. I love the pictogram that they have discussing the different types of agencies on this Working with Real Estate Agents brochure, where it talks about seller agency and buyer agency. It explains dual agency. And if we can all remember that the firm is the agent, the firm is the agent, and we as agents are representatives of the firm. If we keep that clear in our mind, it will make things a lot simpler and easier. When it comes to dual agency, there's dual agency where there could possibly be an individual agent in the middle and two clients, or it could be two separate agents, one each working with the seller or the buyer. And then there's designated dual agency. So we're going to talk about those right now. Okay, so here is the Working Real Estate Agent's disclosure that must be signed and acknowledged. Again, this is done at first substantial contact, which simply means anytime that seller starts to share personal and confidential information we are to disclose them. Sometimes that can be over the phone because we could be lead generating, cold calling, or working with expires or contacting FISBOs, whatever the lead generation resource or strategy that we're using. Once that seller starts to share personal and confidential and motivating information, why they're selling, we need to disclose them at that moment. We're supposed to stop them, what I call Mirandize them. Anything you say can and will be used against you if we do not have agency. So we need to Mirandize them.
So I got a question.
Yes, sir.
So I'm calling through my my database, and I'm calling someone in Atlanta.
Okay.
And doing my thing, introduction, blah blah blah. This is my son's godfather.
Okay.
And then he tells me, oh, so I tell him I'm in real estate, and he says, oh, he said, man, I'm about to sell my house, and then I'm moving to. So I say, you're selling in Atlanta, and he's moving to Jacksonville, is buying.
Mhm.
So of course it's a referral kind of thing.
Okay.
Was I supposed to have done one? Because then again, he's a friend. I know him. Then he starts talking about why he's selling and money is via and this and that. Was I supposed to? So in my mind, I'm thinking this is a referral. I'm gonna have to find someone. Do I share the WWREA with him? Do I go through that or?
That is a great question. Love that question because it happens all the time, right? We're just
Right.
having conversation with people and things come up. And I like to look at it like this. When it comes to things like that, what capacity am I working in at the time? If I'm really lead generating, then I should go ahead and explain agency with them, especially if they are looking or possibly could use me. Now, you may not go through the brochure and
Right.
line by line, but especially share with them, oh, that's awesome that you're looking. Just want to warn you or caution you about a couple of things as you're gathering information and possibly talking with real estate agents. Until agency is signed, guess what? If you share your personal and confidential and motivating information with them, they could potentially, if they run into you again and they have a listing and you're looking to buy, they can share your information with that seller. So it's just adding that layer in there as conversation. It doesn't have to sound formal, but the fact that we let them know that, be careful because someone can use this information against you in the right situation. So it doesn't have to be so formal. But yeah, I appreciate that. And you could even say as your friend or as your whatever, I like to caution you as you're speaking with other agents. This is the way this works. All right, very good. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it did. I just was, I was just trying to figure out if I did because I did talk about, we talked about his motivations and stuff like that. And I asked if he was dealing with an agent. Some company that just buys houses and pays them outright. He had started talking to them. They hadn't done anything yet. So he hadn't signed a paper with them yet. But so. Okay. But this is good to know.
Yeah. Yep. Very good. And every situation is different, and especially by him being in another state and simply a referral, thing and a friend. So as a friend, you're sharing. But I think as a friend, it's also good to just let them know as you're speaking with other people. It's good to keep your personal and motivating information, away from them because they can use that against you later.
Right.
Good question. Good question. Any other questions or comments? Anyone have anything to say to Plummer's question?
I do have a question about that also. So
Okay.
if we get a lead and the lead is out of state,
Mhm.
and we start talking to them and again, they discuss what they want and they're entire information. They discuss it with us. Before we refer it, should we get them to fill out the working with real estate agent disclosure and then refer it out? Or do we refer it out and let the next agent do all of that I'm saying for like a referral. So anybody who gives me a referral or I send a referral, so should they have already had the working with real estate agent disclosure?
Good question, Ruth. And I will tell you, it doesn't hurt. And anytime, especially when we're having these conversations, when we're lead generating. And here's the thing, the North Carolina Real Estate Commission, even they say we're supposed to disclose even if it doesn't go anywhere. Even if we never sign agency with them, we're supposed to still disclose them and keep the disclosure or brochure in our files. So it's a good idea to go ahead and present that. And I will tell you this, Ruth, it sets you apart, because I have spoken with many clients and buyers and sellers, especially buyers, and I'll ask them about the working real estate agents. Have they ever seen this before or discussed it? And they will say no. And maybe they were presented it and didn't remember, and if they didn't remember, then that says something to me, that it wasn't clear or maybe wasn't reviewed by previous agents. So just by disclosing this information to them and by letting them know, hey, when you're talking to agents, if you don't have agency agreement with them, then be careful about sharing your personal and confidential and motivating information. And it clearly says on the disclosure that it's not a contract. It's merely reviewing how agency works. So I do believe it's still a good thing to do, especially over the phone. And here's what the commission also says. If first substantial contact is made over the phone, we have 3 days to get them the actual brochure. And here's the thing, if we send the brochure and they never sign it or anything like that, we are to notate the fact that they didn't sign and still keep it in our files. Did that help, Ruth? Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Yes, ma'am. Any other questions or comments about the working with real estate agents brochure for sellers or disclosure for sellers before we take a look? All right. Can you all see the screen? Can you see my? Okay, very good. All right. So this is the portion for sellers specifically. And it's very important to note right in this first box, the very first line says this form is not a contract. Signing this disclosure only means that you've received it. You've received it, and it's good as agents to review it with them. In the box, please take note of that very last, the third bullet in the very first box, and it says, do not share any confidential information with a real estate agent or assume that the agent is acting on your behalf until you have entered into a written agreement with the agent to represent you. Otherwise, the agent can share your confidential information with others. There it is right there. So it cautions them in the very first box. So let's take a look at the options that apply or can apply to the type relationship that we can have with sellers. Number one is seller's agent, which means you are the listing agent. Again, the firm is the agent, you're the representative of the firm. So we are special agents to our clients. So of course, that first box is going to apply. So there should be a check in that first box because you would be acting in the capacity of a listing agent. And that first sentence says the agent who gave you this form and the agent's firm must enter into a written listing agreement with you before they begin to market your property for sale. And let me stop right there and caution all of us to this. I know sometimes we get really excited about listings. I have a listing, and we want to start doing work before that actual agreement is signed. Technically, if we do that, we are working illegally or not valid Our work isn't valid because there's no listing agreement in place. So please, hold all work until, and marketing until that listing agreement is signed, because the listing agreement is our hiring or employment papers, as I like to call it. Okay, so definitely the first box is going to apply. So check the seller's agency box. Our firm does practice dual agency, which simply means the firm can have the listing and the firm can have a buyer for the listing. So dual agency says the firm has a seller and the firm has a buyer for the seller. So that's all dual agency is. And it explains it in the box, okay? Dual agency will occur if your listing firm has a buyer client who wants to purchase your property. With dual agency, the seller has to agree to dual agency. That is in the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. And it says if you agree in a written agency agreement, the real estate firm and any agent within the same firm would be permitted to represent you and the buyer at the same time. And that's basically all dual agency is. It goes on here to explain dual agency to the seller. And it says a dual agent's loyalty would be divided between you and the buyer, but the firm and its agents must treat you and the buyer fairly and equally, and cannot help you gain an advantage over the other party. So that's dual agency in its broadest form. But below is what is called designated dual agency. And our firm practices designated dual, and it is actually our firm's policy that we are all designated to our clients, especially because we're spread out over 3 locations. So we encourage every agent to always select designated dual agency on the your agency agreements. But certainly here, letting that seller know that if you choose, you can let me and you can make it known in writing that I, the agent, will be dedicated or designated to you. Does that make sense? And that last sentence says it. Each designated agent will or would be loyal only to their client.
Hey,
Okay.
Teresa,
Yes,
do we have to mark dual agency to be designated dual?
yes, yes.
Okay, that's what I
Have to
thought.
have dual to be designated. Yes, sir. Great question. Great question. All right. So as it relates to a seller, if we are on a listing appointment or a potential listing appointment, that last box we're not going to check because that is a buyer agent working with an unrepresented seller. Now that may be important for a seller if we're the buyer's agent, but as a listing, that box does not necessarily need to be checked because that seller would not be a FSBO. Make sense? All right.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right, so note to seller at below that last box simply says there's more information on an agent's duties and services in the question and answers brochure that we are to share with them as well. And it says you can ask your agent for a copy of it. So make sure we provide that to our sellers. The seller will sign and date it, and our information is at the bottom: agent name, license number, and firm. Okay, any questions on working with real estate agents brochure? I know this is not script practice, but I'm gonna ask, and you don't have to, and this might be putting some of you on the spot, but I'm just curious, how do you review the working with real estate agents brochure with your clients? Would anybody like to share?
I'll just say I haven't because I haven't been there. So,
Okay. Okay. All right. All
Sure, I'll
right.
share.
Okay. Thank you, Lauren.
All right. So initially, when I started out, it was very buy the brochure, kind of read the definitions. And then I realized that was the really boring part. So what I did was I would just kind of, oh, thank you, Emmy. I'm sorry, my daughter's bringing me breakfast from her play kitchen. One of the things that I realized was just kind of keeping it concise. So like I would say, so this is going to break down what each of our roles and duties as agents are and what we do, and whether we're acting on your behalf or the seller's, or, the buyer's behalf, whatever situation it is. And then, I just quickly explain what our agency does with the dual agency, and then I just leave it with them, and or I email it to them depending, or through Loop or DocuSign, and then kind of, let them know if they have any questions, that this is a very standard form. It's not a contract, but I kind of make it quick and easy because they don't want to be bored with it, because they can read it. And a lot of people who have bought and sold before have seen this or know of this. So the ones I spend the most time on are the ones who are new to real estate in general, first time buyers, first time sellers, if they've haven't sold in a long time.
Right. I like it. I like it. I like it. And you're right, Lauren. Thank you for sharing that. You're absolutely right. It can be boring. I mean, just going through this, and it's a ton of information and a lot of stuff to throw at clients, or to a potential client in the very beginning. So making it concise. I love that. Love that. Anybody else care to share how they review? Okay. All right. Well, I'll just share what I've done over the years. Like Lauren, I think it's kind of boring. So grabbing the potential client's interest, and just being concise. I guess because I'm an instructor, it basically talks about old car. If anybody remember from real estate pre-licensing class, old car: obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, reasonable skill, care, and diligence. And that's how I go through it. I talk about our duties and how we get paid, and I'm done. So I basically just use our duties in explaining the working with real estate agents brochure. All right. If no other questions, we are going to move on. So let's see what's next on. Let's see, where are we? Okay. We've talked about working with real estate agents. We've talked about seller agency, dual and designated, and the option that wouldn't apply if we are looking for listings. Okay, so next up is the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Okay, and we're going to talk about that. But before I bring that up, I just want to highlight a few things here on the bullets here that you can see. Just to reiterate, every individual agent is a general agent of the firm. Now, let me explain that. We are general agents on the firm. The firm is the agent, and we have, as agents or representatives, the permission and authority to bind the firm to a listing agreement. So that's what a general agent is. We can bind the firm to agency agreements. So we are general agents of the firm. So once we sign, have that seller sign, and we sign as a general agent of the firm, we then become a special agent to our client. Okay. So and I keep reiterating that we're general agents of the firm, is if we keep that in the back of our mind, it will help us along the way make decisions when issues arise. That will help us. And I'll tell you, there have been issues in this particular market because the market is so hot and buyers are overpaying, and sellers are expecting their homes to be sold in 2 hours instead of 2 weeks. That's the market we're in, and buyers are putting a lot of money down up front, and there are issues. So if we keep this in mind, that we are general agents of the firm, special agents to our client, that can help us navigate these issues when they come up. All right. When it comes to the listing agreement is between the firm and the client, the firm and the seller. And it's right there in that first paragraph that we'll see as we go through the listing agreement. Some things that we need to make sure that is in the form, and that's there. It's the effective date and the expiration date. In the past, I had really wanted to go to bat for one of our agents, and it was on the buyer agency side. However, I couldn't go to bat because their agreement was invalid, and it was invalid because it did not have an expiration date on it. So make sure when you're completing your forms that these dates are filled in. The other thing is we use technology, and technology is great when it works. But I tell you, technology can be fickle. And sometimes Command and DocuSign and .loop can be fickle. So when you're completing and filling out and filling in your forms, filling in these blanks electronically, make sure when you save them, and then go back in there and open it up to make sure those dates are in there, because that's what happened to this agent. And I really wanted to go to bat for the agent, but I couldn't because the agency agreement didn't contain an expiration date. And the commission says for it to be in writing, it has to have an expiration date. And I could not. So let's just make sure we double check technology and what we're doing. Firm's compensation is covered, and we'll get to that when we see it. So we'll talk about that. The firm's duties, again, that's an old car. We can explain that through obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable skill, care, and diligence. Those are our firm's duties. So we need to make sure that we are providing those things to our seller clients. The other thing that we're going to talk about is the marketing date, the marketing date versus the effective date, whether it's going to be publicly marketed or if it's going to be an office exclusive. And if it's going to be a coming soon. We need to make sure we are clear on how those different scenarios work. And we'll talk about dual agency as well. All right, any questions here before we take a look at the exclusive right to sell listing agreement? I have a question for you all. For those who have been practicing and producing listing agreements, your listings, when do you present your listing agreement? I'm just curious. I know you've gone through Command last week, the technology, and I believe you're going to go, some of you may be on the elite team, and you'll talk about lead generating and strategies there and the different facets and ways to lead generate. Curious, would anybody care to share how you conduct your listing presentation and when you present the listing agreement? Silence.
Are you referring to when we present it to our customers for the first time?
Yes.
So for me, after I provide a listing presentation, afterwards, I'd be like, okay, well, do you have any aversion to signing a listing contract with me? And then if they do, we could talk about it. And I'd have the forms on me at hand to have it signed if we could get through all of their ifs, ands, or buts.
Gotcha. I like it, Rebecca. So you go through your listing presentation at the end. Would you like to sign? Are you comfortable with signing me, or are you I think you said adverse.
Yeah, I ask like pretty much, you know, like, do you have any aversions to signing with a listing agreement with right now? And if they do have any, then we see like how can we solve that? And then if they have something like they want to talk to another agent, then I'd be like, okay, well, if it weren't for this other agent, are there any other aversions? And then hopefully they sign.
I love it. Rebecca, sounds like you've been to script practice and that you have this down. I absolutely love it. Love it.
When
Love it.
Command provides such good listing presentations, I mean, how could you not? You know?
I love that, Rebecca. That's a plug for Command right there. Thank you for sharing that. They do have great listing presentations, and why not take one of them, use it? Why reinvent the wheel? If something's already created, just adjust it and customize it to that particular listing. Thank you for sharing that, Rebecca. Anybody else do anything differently or care to share? All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at this exclusive right to sell listing agreement. Okay, so I already have one pre-filled here with what is supposed to go in these blanks. All right, and let me just ease your minds. I am not going to read this word for word, okay? Again, I know when it comes to compliance, not the most sexiest topic. However, we need to know how to complete these so we are in compliance with real estate license law, commission rules, as well as any code of ethic violations that could potentially come up, and how our office likes to see these completed. All right, so when we are going through this exclusive right to sell listing agreement, you will notice at the very top, it will say who this agreement is between. It's between the seller, who we've named Ready to Sell Now and wife of Ready to Sell, and the firm, which is now Keller Williams Central. Let me just bring that up. That is our name now. We have changed our name. It's official. We are now Keller Williams Central. You can also use KW Central. So Keller Williams Central or KW Central. Yes, Nicole, I have this as a package and we'll send it out to everyone. So I will ask you, if you will, at the end of class, when we're done, when we're at the end of boot camp, let's, if you all will put your email addresses where you want this sent to, I will get it out to you. All right. Another question. Does any of you, I know some of you, not sure if all of you or some of you are PBs or not, but especially for those who are not provisional brokers, do you intend to create a firm of yourself to brand or market? And let me explain. For instance, I am agent of Keller Williams Central. However, I have a firm set up that's called Teresa Knows Real Estate. That's my brand. That's how I market. I have firm license. There's a firm license for that. And if I am, or when I am signing agency agreements, I have to include that name on this same line with Keller Williams Central. So it would read, this is between Ready to Sell Now, wife of Ready to Sell, Keller Williams Central / Teresa Knows Real Estate. Okay. Don't know if any of you are in that situation, but if you're considering creating a firm, not just for compensation purposes, but especially for branding and marketing, that name needs to go on this as well. Plumber, I see you came off of mute. Do you have a question or comment?
I was gonna ask, and then you mentioned my name and I forgot. I had a question. It'll come. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry I had that effect. All right.
I did not know that. So if we have a firm license, we need to be putting our firm name and then Keller Williams Central.
If you are branding and marketing, yes, you are.
What if you have a firm license, but you really don't market it or kind of do that route, really? I mean,
So
I pretty much.
Okay, so you don't, so is it created just for compensation?
Predominantly so far, correct. I haven't done any type of marketing campaigns, advertising. It's just strictly been to avoid tax. It's really just to save me tax money every year.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Tax implications is the only real reason.
Okay, so you get paid, so Keller attorney pays KW pays Jeff Ricks Incorporated or Jeff Ricks LLC. I know that's not the name, but for my illustration. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right. You're probably going to need to do that because you're getting paid unless you are an employee, because commission says we are only to get paid from a BIC or our broker. So we may need to have a conversation offline on that because I'll need to ask some more clarifying questions about that. So let's talk about that. Okay.
Right, thank you.
All right. Yes, sir.
Okay, so I remember my question.
Okay.
Okay, so for example, I am going to try to brand as Plumber Baylor Homes.
Mhm.
My website is plumberbaylorhomes.kw.com. I haven't done any, so I already have an LLC in the state of North Carolina that I was doing with my other business. And basically I was going to do, so my LLC is Baylor Business Solutions LLC. I was going to do a DBA as Plumber Baylor Homes.
Mhm.
Once I officially do the DBA as Plumber Baylor Homes, am I understanding this correctly that it would be Keller Williams Central / Plumber Baylor Homes?
If you have to have a firm license for
Okay,
that.
a firm license. I have to specifically have a firm license to do that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right. Thank
Yep.
you.
Good question. Yes, sir. All right. Awesome. You can brand. Now, let me clarify. Plumber, you can brand with your DBA. You can brand. However, it does not go on agency agreements.
Okay. Unless it is a firm, like
Correct.
it is licensed as a firm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That
Thank
is
you.
correct. You're welcome. Great questions. Like I said, I'm not going to read this line by line because we'd be here all day and we don't want to do that. So we're going to highlight the different sections, especially the ones where we have to fill in the blank. All right, very good. Awesome questions and good discussions. Moving down to section 1 or paragraph 1 of the exclusive right to sell. Number 1 talks about the term of the agreement. Here, now, let me make this clear. If, okay, she chose, okay. Here, where it says effective date, if this property is not listed with anyone, this is a seller, they've signed agency agreement with you right there on the table because Rebecca gave such a fabulous listing presentation and they said, yes, we will sign with you right now. You would check the first box. The effective date shall be the date that this agreement has been signed by both seller and firm. That day is the effective date. However, suppose you're working or you've been contacted by a seller who is currently listed with another firm. However, they're not satisfied. They aren't satisfied and they say in a few days this will expire, and I'd like to get you to list my property. And notice I said the seller contacted you. You did not contact the seller, because we're realtors and we are not supposed to go after or solicit anyone else's client. Okay, so that seller contacts you. The second box, the one that is checked here on your screen, that's the one you will check. And it says the property is currently listed for sale exclusively with another real estate firm. And the seller represents that the current listing agreement expires on a certain day. And you complete or fill in the blank with that. Now, I would ask that seller to produce a copy of their listing agreement so we can verify the date that their current listing expires. Okay. Once that expires, once their current listing expires, the effective date of this agreement shall commence immediately upon the expiration of the current listing agreement. Okay. All right. It goes on to talk about Article 16 of the Realtors Code of Ethics that says we shall not engage in any practice or take any action inconsistent with exclusive representation or exclusive brokerage relationship agreements that other realtors have with clients. So we are not to solicit, okay? Not to solicit properties that are currently listed. If they come to us, that's okay, but we are not to solicit, okay? No questions or comments there. Let's move on to paragraph 2, which discusses property information. So here's where we will complete the street address and any other legal description provided by the city or county in which the property is located. So the property address is easy. Finding the county is easy, but we need to go to the county records to get the other identifying property information, specifically legal descriptions, okay? All right, we are to complete as much of that as we possibly can. All right, it's not necessary to have absolutely every blank filled in here, but we need to have as much as possible because the property address isn't enough. Okay, we need to be specific when it comes to listings and addresses. All right. Paragraph 3, fixtures and exclusions. I like the warning here. The warning says that the party should not assume that an item will or will not be included in the sale based on an oral or written statement or understanding that is not a part of a sales contract. So please let your sellers know if they do not want something to convey, they need to get it out of there. And the best practice is to get it out of the property prior to it being listed. The other thing that I'd like to point out is 3B when it talks about specified items. In that, it talks about traditional and smart versions of items. If your seller is going to convey something that has it, or that's a smart version or some type of technology with the property, make sure that it is that they've removed all of their information from it. Okay, you don't your seller don't want to convey something that still has their information in it, so make sure they erase all data. Okay, and if it is some type of smart version or traditional version, they need to leave all components if it's going to convey with the property. I will tell you this, below you will see a bulleted list of what is considered to be fixtures. Now I'm gonna tell you, and I've been in real estate almost 2 decades, about 18 years, and this list did not look like this when I first started. I don't even know that we had a list of fixtures that are things that are considered fixtures. Well, we see that the list is long. Please make sure you review this with your clients so they will know these items convey. If you don't want them to convey, get them out of there And if you will convey them, make sure they leave everything with it. I had a seller not too long ago. They did not tell me that they were not conveying the ring system. And when the buyers moved in, the buyers came in and saw holes on doors, holes in they had removed all the sensors, had removed the ring, and the buyer was expecting it to stay. So was I, because the seller changed their mind, I guess, and removed it and took it with them. So make sure we know, and sellers know, what's considered fixtures, and we notate what is not going to stay. Like here in this example, 3E, items that will not convey. We need to list those specifically so we can have a record of the seller telling us what items do not convey. Okay. All right. Everybody good with section 3? If no questions or comments, we will move on to section or paragraph 4. Personal property. If the seller is leaving any personal property, typically the refrigerator, washer and dryer, sometimes there's lawn equipment or patio furniture, maybe even a TV or two that they do not want to dismount and carry with them. If it's going to convey, make sure the seller lets you know you include it here. And if it's included here and everyone, the seller's clear, you're clear, this can be marketed, that these items will stay in your list, I'm sorry, in your MLS sheet. Okay. And even if it is, even if you do market personal items that will convey at no cost or no value to the buyer, just because it's in MLS, make sure the buyer for the property lists it in the contract if they want it, because if they don't, the seller can take it with them. So make sure if you're marketing personal items to convey, it's included in the contract if the buyer wants it. Of course, we'll discuss more on that on the buyer side. All right. Section 5, home warranty. Here's where the seller will determine whether or not they want to include or get a warranty with their property. And you can check the corresponding box whether they agree or do not agree to pay for a warranty at settlement for the buyer. If they do, make sure that the cost that they will spend, what that cost is up to, not to exceed a certain amount. And here's the thing, if you have I don't think our firm has a relationship with a home warranty company that will give a fee or pay a fee to the firm for a referral, okay? I don't think we do. So that box should be 0. All right. Paragraph 6, listing price. Here is where we will notate the listing price that you, the agent, and the seller have agreed upon based on your listing presentation and your comps that you've done. And make sure you do provide comps for this. That's a thing now. I've seen several issues that have come up where agents may not have included or provided comps. That could be an issue later. So make sure you do provide comps when you're determining list price. There's a question here in the chat I'm going to read. How often do sellers agree to include home warranty? I will tell you, thank you for the question. In today's market, not seeing warranties at all. Sellers aren't having to, because buyers are willing to pay and they're not getting a whole lot in return. But when it becomes closer or more buyer's market, we will see warranties and things being offered as incentives to buyers to purchase that particular property. So I'm not seeing home warranties. I'm not seeing home warranties being offered today in this market. Very good. Good questions. All right. So here, when we determine the list price, when that's been agreed upon, we're going to put that amount here, whatever that is. And we will also need to notate the terms. Okay. Cash. I believe everybody will accept cash. Cash is king, right? So there's cash, FHA, VA, USDA, conventional. Now, let me say this about FHA. Make sure that we are clear at as listing agents, on what, I'm sorry, for some reason, I don't know why I clicked on my calendar and it's open. Okay, sorry about that. FHA is not a bad loan type. There's nothing wrong with an FHA loan. In today's market, because it's a seller's market, there's that extra caveat to an FHA and VA loan, and that is the addendum, the FHA and VA addendum that says that the property needs to appraise for the purchase price. Now that's for the lender. The lender's not going to lend over appraised value. So if the property doesn't appraise for the purchase price, there could be, some renegotiations going on. So FHA and VA has that extra caveat or that addendum that says the property needs to appraise for the purchase price. So again, there's nothing wrong with an FHA loan, nothing wrong with the VA loan. There are specifically those appraisal types, though, are looking for safety issues and safety concerns. So there's an extra layer to the appraisal. However, nothing wrong with the loan. So make sure, we're educating our sellers correctly and properly on that. There may be some properties that may not pass the FHA or VA appraisal because of safety or health issues. I know I had a listing earlier this year and it was rotting deck, the stairs on the deck had rotted and it was a safety thing. So I knew, and the seller did not have the resources to repair these items. So because of that reason, I knew that an FHA, it would not pass an FHA appraisal for that particular reason. And it wouldn't pass VA as well. So make sure that we're not miseducating our clients. Nothing wrong with the loans. It's the property. Does the property have issues that may not pass the appraisal portion? Okay. All right. USDA, of course, the property has to be eligible. If you're selling in counties or areas that are USDA eligible, then that's a easy check, just going to usda.gov and checking their eligibility map and determining if a property is eligible. If it is, you can certainly check the USDA box. Of course, conventional is the common loan type. Loan assumptions and seller financing, not seeing a lot of that today. If a loan can be assumed, you need to absolutely check with the seller and have them find out if the loan can be assumed and even if that's what they want. And of course, that seller financing, if the seller is willing to finance that. And you'll see here, here's an example. You'll see the box checked here for other. A seller may have a Bitcoin account or something and may be willing to accept Bitcoins for their property. I know this is a far stretch. It's not common. However, it could happen. And if the seller is willing to accept that, then that can be notated here on paragraph 6. Any questions here about list price and financing terms? quiet bunch today. Okay, moving right along. This is your favorite part, right? Paragraph 7, firm's compensation. And notice
But
it.
seriously, have you seen a contract with Bitcoin?
I have
You're
not.
killing me. And that is so over my head.
I have not, but it's possible.
My son's making money investing in it, but if I saw, I'd be like, what? I don't know.
I'm telling you, that might be a doozy for the attorney as well. What? I don't even know how to accept Bitcoins.
I don't
in my
either.
trust account. Right.
Well, we're evolving.
Exactly. We may see this in the future. Who knows? But it's likely in it's likely in this industry and market that we're in, technology. All right. Paragraph 7, firm's compensation. All right. How we get paid, how it's earned. Okay. And we'll talk about this when it comes to KW policy, our local office policy. The firm expects a 6% of the in compensation. That's what we go for. That's what we put out to our agents. That's the rate or percentage that we like to see. Now, that can be adjusted, but I won't get into that here. We'll discuss that on policy and procedure day. I will say this though, if the seller just absolutely says, no, I'll sign with you today if you make it 5%, you are allowed to go down to 5% at your discretion. However, if it's more than a 1% decrease, then we ask that you speak with someone in leadership, either the BIC, you can have a conversation with me, Ariel, or the Director of Operations, Emily, okay? All right. Okay, so 6% here would be, would go in that blank, of course, of the gross sales price of the property, and we'll see where that's going to be split later. If you, the agent, agree to a set fee instead of a percentage, it would go in that blank. However, again, our firm policy is that we like to see a 6% as the compensation. All right. Below 7B talks about how the fee is earned. Okay. How we earn our fees. We earn it by 1, if a ready, willing, and able buyer is procured by the firm, a cooperating real estate firm, the seller, or anyone else during the term of this agreement at the price and on terms set forth herein, or at any price and upon any terms acceptable to the seller, our fee is deemed earned. Okay. It's also earned if 2, the property is sold, option, exchange, conveyed, or transferred, or the seller agrees during the term of this agreement or any renewal thereof to sell, option, exchange, convey, or transfer the property at any price and upon any terms whatsoever. If the seller chooses to do that, we've earned our fee. And in paragraph 3, it says, or B3, if the circumstances set out in 1 or 2 have not occurred, and if within, it's up to your discretion how many days you put in there. Some put 30, some put 60. I've seen some put 365 days, a year after. So it's up to you how you run your business, but whatever that number is, you're going to put that in this blank here. And it says within X number of days after the expiration date, this is called the protection period, the seller directly or indirectly sells, options, exchange, convey, transfer, or agrees to sell, option, exchange, convey, or transfer the property upon any terms whatsoever to any person with whom seller firm or any cooperating firm communicated regarding this property during the term of this agreement or any renewal, okay? All right, now here's the thing. Here's what we have to do. Provided the names of such persons are delivered or postmarked to the seller within 15 days after the expiration date. So for that protection period, we need to make sure we uphold our end by providing the seller with the names of those people who have been communicated with during the term of this agreement, okay? Now, here's the thing. There is an exception to this protection period, and it says, however, seller shall not be obligated to pay the fee if a valid listing agreement is entered into between seller and another real estate broker, and the property is subsequently sold or exchanged during the period, okay? All right, any questions there on firm's compensation and when it is deemed earned?
I have a question.
Yes.
What if you have a listing and you go under contract and then the seller breaches or somebody breaches? Can you explain that?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes, and I think that's going to be covered right in this section in 7C, when the fee is due and payable. So with the seller's breach, absolutely. If the seller breaches, especially for discriminatory practices, or if the seller even goes on a contract and the seller breaches the contract, fee is earned and due and payable. So yes, Sarah, if the seller breaches, it is due and payable. It is deemed earned and is payable. So let's read 7C here. And it says, once earned as set forth above, the fee will be due and payable at the earlier of the distribution of proceeds from the sale. That's typical closing, right? C2 says the seller's failure to sell the property, including but not limited to seller's refusal to sign an offer to purchase the property at the price and terms stated herein or on other terms acceptable to the seller. The seller's default on an executed sales contract for the property, or the seller's agreement with the buyer to unreasonably modify or cancel an executed sales contract for the property. So that's covered. Your question, Sarah, is covered under C2. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right.
Quick question.
Yes.
Okay, so how often does the firm really go after the people who have breached their contracts? Because I know that's a common question that, you know, sometimes it's worth it and sometimes it's not.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good question, Lauren. And that's the thing. If this is the case, and I'm so glad you asked that question. If that is the case, the seller breach, and this is where I was saying in the beginning, please remember that the agreement is between the firm and the seller. So if this is the case and you, the agent, want to go after the seller for fees earned, and I've earned this is what, and you need to pay, it's due and payable, then you need to come see me and we need to discuss the situation, of course, and then get all of the paperwork together. And we'll take a look at the situation. And like you said, Lauren, to make sure, is it worth it going after this? Or, you know, it could be a situation where, I don't know, maybe the seller doesn't want to sell right now, but they want to keep the listing agreement and they're going to sell in the future. So in certain cases like that, you know, okay, we'll get it later. So it's going to depend on the situation. how it's handled, but definitely as a firm, you know, just come see me and we'll discuss it and see what we need to do.
Great, thank you.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Great question. All right. A lot of times 7D doesn't, so I'm not going to go over that one. Now, that's not to say ignore 7D, because it does and has a place. It just doesn't happen a lot. So I'm not going to focus too much on that, covering this. All right. 7E talks about additional compensation. If there is additional compensation, whether it's an incentive, bonus, rebate, and or other valuable consideration is offered to the firm from any other party or person in connection with a sale of the property, seller will permit firm to receive it in addition to the fee. So if there's any you know, additional compensation, the seller agrees to allow the firm and the listing agent to receive it, okay? What we have to do is timely disclose the promise or expectation of receiving any such additional compensation and confirm the disclosure in writing before the seller makes or accepts an offer to sell. So we have a duty. If there's to be any additional compensation, we have a duty as a firm and you as a listing agent to make that known to the seller, as it says, before seller makes or accepts an offer to sell, okay? There's a form for it. It's form number 770, created by the North Carolina Association of Realtors. It may be used to confirm the disclosure of any such additional compensation. All right. 7F talks about attorney fees and costs if there are any. Hopefully things like this won't occur, but if the firm is the prevailing party in any legal proceeding brought by firm against the seller to recover any or all of the fee, firm shall be entitled to recover from the seller the reasonable attorney fees and court costs in connection with the proceeding, okay? Any questions on paragraph 7, firm's compensation? All right, moving right along to paragraph 8, cooperation with and compensation to other firms. Please note that our firm does not cooperate with or compensate sub-agents of the seller. So when there's a contract, the other agent needs to represent the buyer, okay? We cooperate we cooperate with and compensate buyer agents, okay? And by doing so, we're going to fill in the blank with the amount of the compensation, okay? Yes, ma'am. Susie.
I'm getting a little bit confused about dual agency there.
Okay.
You said you don't compensate the sub-agent of the firm.
The seller.
Would that not be a designated dual transaction?
So when it comes to sub-agents, so when it comes to designated agency says that if I am the listing agent, I am going to be designated only to my seller, which means I can't bring a buyer for the property. I'm designated specifically to my seller. Another agent within the firm can bring a buyer and they are to be designated to their buyer.
Okay. But are you saying that if I had a team and there were 3 people other than myself, someone in my team could not be designated as the buyer's agent if I'm listing it? Is that correct? Is that what you're saying here?
No. They can be designated to a buyer. You would be designated to the seller.
Okay.
Someone on your team can be designated to the buyer. That's not the same as sub-agent of the seller. Sub-agent of the seller says that you're the listing agent designated to your seller. another agent within the firm brings a buyer, but they don't have buyer agency. That means they're a sub-agent of the seller. We don't compensate sub-agents of the seller. That other agent within our firm needs to have agency agreement with that buyer.
Got it.
Got it? Perfect. All right. Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right. So moving right along. Okay, cooperate with buyer agents, and that's what we expect. We don't really have a separate, this third box, firm policy on cooperating real estate firms, although we do compensate and cooperate with other real estate firms, but they have buyer agency agreements with their firms. So that's covered under the previous section, okay? All right. Any other questions on cooperation and compensation to other firms? All right. Paragraph 9 talks about the firm's duties. As mentioned before, that is summed up in old CAR. So I'm not going to go through every detail of paragraph 9, but that is not to say we should not know what it says. We should be very clear on the firm's duties, okay? One portion I do want to note is this portion here in all caps, and it's in bold. So that means it's extremely important. And this is the non-discriminatory language that is included in this agency agreement. And we as a firm uphold this to the letter. The agent, meaning the firm, and you, the general agent of the firm, shall conduct all brokerage activities in regard to this agreement without respect to the race, color, religion, sex, national origin, handicap, or familial status of any party or prospective party. Further, realtors, because we are, have an ethical duty to conduct such activities without respect to the sexual orientation or gender identity of any party or prospective party. So that says it in a nutshell. Yes, ma'am, Susie.
I had this darling young couple who's newly married,
Okay.
and I wanted to ask them, are you going to base your decision on schools? And then I was like, did I just violate that rule? Because I'm asking them what their familiar status is. Do they have children?
Okay. Okay. Well, it could very well lead or be assumed that you were speaking to familial status. However, you didn't ask about families specifically. So your question could, in essence, is okay. I probably would say it more like this. Are schools important to you? Is the school district important? And that, kind of takes out of it how you will be basing your decision. Make sense?
Another way that I like to ask for questions like that is when you're speaking with them and just asking, what are the goals for your home, for your neighborhood? What is it that, and kind of let them lead the conversation, because if they mention children, then you're in the clear because they have volunteered that information to you. So when it comes to little things like that, I kind of let the clients lead the conversation on that and just kind of give them a broad question of what is the most important thing about your new home for you.
I love it, Lauren. Absolutely love it. That was great. That was great. I love that. If you don't mind, could you type that, the question or the statement in the chat? Put that question. I love that. We can all use that. Love it.
I will, the trainer in me was just gonna say that sounds like a 1 hour lunch and learn. This topic sounds like a 1 hour lunch and learn topic, because I can see how easy it is to cross the line there.
It really is. And I'll tell you, when I'm teaching, I believe it's brokerage relationships, when I'm teaching 303, when I'm teaching North Carolina Real Estate License Law Commission rules, that is a heavy topic. And we go through certain scenarios of how we can say this, how we can advertise this. So thank you, Plumber. That may be something we need to add, a topic. Yes. All right, very good, very good. Okay, you'll notice here that the seller needs to acknowledge that the seller has been made aware of each firm duty described above. So they need to acknowledge that, okay? Oh, one other thing I want to point out, here's the warning box right above, outlined in red. Warning boxes are outlined in red, you'll notice. And it says buyer letters. That's been a topic because of discriminatory language or possible discriminatory incidents and issues. Love letters, it's just been put out there by the different association of realtors. Buyer letters are discouraged. Not to say that we tell buyers not to write them, or as listing agents, we tell our sellers not to receive them. We should make it a practice today. If a buyer is going to send, or buyer's agent is going to give one, we need to make sure maybe as they deliver it handwritten, closed envelope, something that we don't see, because we can have unconscious biases as well that, you know, preconceived notions about something we read. So we want to be very careful there, very careful. And so it gives a warning here. And it says, in order to avoid potential liability for unlawful discrimination, as well as the appearance of impropriety, sellers should discuss with firm how any such letters that may be submitted will be handled. Have that conversation up front, okay?
Teresa, may I add something to that?
Sure.
So for my first listing, I had a buyer letter that came in with the offer, and I presented it with the offer.
Okay.
And then I noticed the reaction with the client was that they seemed very attached to that, because it was the only letter we received. But we had 6 other offers. And so I found that maybe the presentation of the letter wasn't the best. So this last listing that I had go under contract, we received a buyer letter. And what I did was I presented the offers first. And then I told them, I have a buyer letter. Would you like to see it?
Yes.
And then I did it at the end. And I found that that allowed them to really make a more unbiased decision, because we discussed the terms of all the offers first, and there wasn't an emotional connection. And ultimately it was one of the contracts that were their top 2 anyway. And so that kind of made it a little bit easier for that, I think. And I think that's the way I'll probably present going forward buyer letters, is wait until the end. And see, in case there's more than one, because, you know, if there's multiples.
Right.
But that way we talk about the actual business aspect first, and then we can make it more of a personal journey.
Right, exactly. That's a good strategy, Lauren. I had a similar thing happen earlier as well, a buyer letter, and they were actually liking that offer anyway. And I told them I've received a buyer letter with it, and presented it at the end. It multiple offer situation. So yeah, I like that. And even here, what I like about this warning, it's saying having the discussion up front, you know, just and asking the seller if one is received, or if letters are received, how would you like them handled? Because that's another thing, our obedience, following our client's lawful instructions. So if it's addressed up front, we can know and be better prepared. But I certainly like that strategy. Presenting it if they want it at the end. Very good. Very good. Thank you for sharing that comment. All right, paragraph 10, marketing. So if the marketing is not going to be, if the marketing will not take place on the effective date of the contract, of the agreement, then we need to notate what that marketing date is. So that's paragraph 10, the marketing date. That's 10A. So whatever that date is, we need to insert it there. Now, here's the thing. We have to notate now in this new form, in 10B, which talks about marketing authorization. Is this going to be marketed publicly? If so, that box or that blank needs to be initialed or checked by the seller, that it will be marketed publicly, which means it's going to be put in MLS and we can post it on Facebook and all of these other social media outlets. It can be on websites and all that sort of thing, places. So if that's the case, they need to initial notate there. The seller also needs to give permission. If they want it, if you're going to go coming soon, if it's going to be coming soon, if it's going to be marketed as a coming soon property, then that box needs to be checked and the proper paperwork needs to be attached with the listing agreement. There are coming soon forms for the Triad MLS and Triangle MLS. Alamance MLS does not have coming soon forms, although a property can be marketed as a coming soon in Alamance. There's just no form for it. So if it's a coming soon, make sure your forms are attached to the listing agreement, okay? And they are signed and approved by the BIC. Good question, Jeff. Any chance these three will ever get on the same page with coming soon? Probably not. Probably not. I doubt it. It would be nice because there's different rules for all three. Probably not. Under the marketing section, we should notate and have the seller authorize a sign in the yard, open houses, advertising other than the internet, and internet advertising. Those should be authorized by the seller. Now, if the property is going to be an office exclusive, which means it's not going to be marketed publicly, there are forms for that, and they must be signed, sent to the BIC, sent to me, and because I have to do something with the forms. So if it's going to be an office exclusive, I need to be signing the withhold from MLS forms for Triad MLS and Triangle MLS, okay? Alamance MLS does not currently have office exclusive forms, okay? However, Triad and Triangle does, so if it's going to be an office exclusive, those withhold forms need to be sent to me. If you're, need to be sent to me. It's going to say if the agent is a Hillsborough agent, they need to be sent to Tiffany, since she's the BIC on paper for that location. Okay. All right. Seller also needs to authorize a lockbox on the property if they so desire. And here's the seller acknowledgement here for marketing. I'm not going to read all of that, but make sure you are familiar with the marketing rules under paragraph 10. Okay. The other warning I want to point out is recording devices, because a lot of sellers and homeowners have recording devices on their property. Make sure we are warning our sellers about recording devices, especially audio, okay? All right, earnest money. We do not, our firm does not have a trust account, therefore we will not be holding any earnest money. That needs to be held by the buyer's attorney, okay? 12, seller's representations. We need to notate whether the seller has owned for a year or less than, or does not yet own the property. There are cases when that applies. However, I won't go into any detail about that here. We need to notate whether the seller is in bankruptcy or is even contemplating bankruptcy. And access to the property. How is it accessed? The easement, is there a private road? And if there's an agreement, if there is a private road, we need to notate that. Also, we need to notate if there's a manufactured home on the property and whether or not there is a homeowners association associated with this property. And I will say, make sure under seller's representation, this is the section where I see most compliance issues, things not being checked or marked by the listing agent. So make sure we are completing, section 12, the seller's representation section. We also, and let's not just check the boxes here, let's actually provide the seller with a sample copy of the offer to purchase and contract. Also, a sample copy of the professional services disclosure. Let's make sure we're doing that. We also need to notate whether it's in a flood zone, whether the property has synthetic stucco, if there's a termite bond on the property, and if there are any current liens on the property, okay? And what the approximate balance is. All right. If there are any judgments that the seller knows about, then we specify that in section 7 of this, and we just put in here an example of what that could be. We would just write it out or type it out. There is one judgment in the amount of $7,700 payable to liens or us upon the sale of the property. So we need to, and I know it may be uncomfortable for sellers, but these are questions we need to ask because it will affect the conveyance of their property. If the property has a tenant, we need to notate that because the buyer will be purchasing with the agreement in place. I like this here that they have added for this year, for 2021, the FHA appraisal portion, and it says an FHA appraisal has or has not been performed on the property within 4 months prior to the effective date. That's important. Sometimes they may be, and if that's the case, if an FHA appraisal has been performed, that FHA appraisal is going to stand if a buyer is coming in using an FHA loan, okay? We need to notate if there are any special assessments, because if there are and they are confirmed, the seller has to pay those by closing, okay? And that's where we would notate it, whether there are or are not. Fuel tanks. We need to notate whether there's a fuel tank on the property. If it is, whether it's owned or whether it's leased, whether it's in use or it's not, and how many, if there's more than one, okay? So we need to notate that. Paragraph 13 speaks to the seller's duties. I'm not going to go through that, but make sure you are clear on what the seller's duties are so we can review that with them. The seller also needs to notate whether or not they want to have a home inspection or pre-list inspection on the property. I've heard varying opinions on this, and some agents are in favor of it, some are not. Whether or not we are in favor or not, it's really up to the seller whether they want to have one done or not. We just need to educate them on, if they do, there are things we have to disclose now that we know, but it gives them the opportunity to repair before marketing the property if they so choose, okay? Paragraph 16 talks about additional terms and conditions. This particular seller has one or had some, and it's notated here. Motivated seller agrees to pay listing agent or firm a $5,000 bonus if the property goes under contract in the first 3 days of being active and closes within 45 days of this listing. Wow, we definitely could have done that this year and received a bonus. So if there are any additional terms and conditions to it, this is where we would put it between, of course, you, the listing agent, firm, and the seller. Okay. Paragraph 17 speaks to dual agency that we were discussing earlier. So on our listing agreements, what we will see or should see is the seller to notate in that in 17D whether or not they authorize us to, or the firm, to act as dual agent. If they do, they're going to initial in the top lines. If they do not, then they will initial in the second set of lines. If they don't authorize the firm to act as a dual agent, that means none of our agents can bring a buyer, okay? If they want designated agency, which is 17E, they also need to make sure that they select dual agency in the first line above. So first line above and last line or third line, section E, okay? All right. Paragraph 18 speaks to mediation. I won't get into that, but that's in case there's a disagreement between the seller and the firm or listing agent. Okay, wire fraud. Please caution your sellers about the warnings there with wire fraud. It's commonplace. I won't say commonplace, but it's more common today than it has been. So make sure we educate our sellers to tell them not to send wire information electronically, contact the attorney's office directly. Do not give wire information to us. Do not send it through email. Make sure they contact the attorney's office specifically. Okay. And of course, we're going to have the seller sign, complete their information, and we as agents sign on behalf of the firm.
A question for you on the firm
Yes.
license. If we
Yes.
have our individual license, do we put that or we do put our?
Yes, I'm sorry. And let me just bring that back up so we can see that. Good question, Jeff. Okay, here where it says firm, in my case, for example, I'll put Keller Williams Central / Teresa Knows Real Estate LLC. I will put KW Central's firm license as well as the firm's license for Teresa Knows Real Estate. And then I will commit to fill in the information there for the firm and sign as the individual agent and also put my individual license number there. Does that answer your question, Jeff?
Yes, thank you. I didn't know about those 2 slots for the individual. Like I said, since I don't really market it that way, but.
Right. Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. Okay. Good questions. All right. Real quick, I just want to talk about or show the, let's see, the seller estimated net sheet. We should be including that with our in our listing agent services to our seller clients. So make sure we are completing that and giving a copy of that to our seller. I just want to bring it up here real quick. Okay, there it is. Okay. Okay. All right. Make sure we are completing these for our sellers. This lets them know the estimate of what they can expect to receive at closing. So just make sure we are completing this. You can see right here at the top what the potential sales price could be. And on each form, we have a room for 3 potential scenarios. And so for this potential one, I just chose 330, 350, and 370. Make sure we do this and complete this. I always, as a best practice, figure high. Always figure high, because we don't know what the specific amounts are for certain categories. So as long as we're figuring high and give them an idea, an estimate of what they can or will be getting at closing, we are good there. Always have the seller to sign, of course, and do not forget to sign yourselves. Make sure we are providing that, okay? So all of the things that will apply, definitely the attorney's fee, the brokerage fee, HOAs, if it has HOA, taxes, prorated taxes need to be included. Recording fee needs to be included, and revenue stamps. Every seller will pay excise tax or revenue stamps, okay? Any questions on seller estimated net? Lastly, because we have about 10 minutes left, I wanted to just remind us of a few things. When it comes to seller disclosures, just a couple things there. With the seller disclosures, I wanted to hear from you about your best practice. What is your best practice about seller disclosures? When should the seller complete? Should they complete it the day that the listing agreement is signed, or is it something you provide to them and they complete later? So find your best practice and make that a part of your listing service about when you present the disclosures to your seller, because they are required in most situations. One thing I want to say is never are disclosures to be completed by you, the agent. We are never to complete it. We are to instruct them on how to fill it out, but it's not for us to do. So never to be completed by the agent. When it comes to the RPOs,
Teresa,
yes.
it's Ethiel.
Hi.
I would like to say you are required to make sure they fill it out completely.
Yes. Yes. Thank you, Ethiel. Yes, they are to complete it or fill it out completely. Yes, they are. And another thing, thank you for that, Ethiel, that I want to point out, it's just, we've seen this happen over the last couple of months, is that a seller actually said or answered no to something, and the buyer found it out to be incorrect, and the buyer went to their attorney. The seller got an attorney, and because the seller said no, then they didn't go to court, but they found some cause that the seller was wrong or answered incorrectly, not accurately, because they said no and there was a problem. And because of that, the seller gave back the due diligence and earnest money. I'm not saying that's going to happen in every case, but just make sure we educate our sellers on answering truthfully and completing the entire form, okay? When it comes to the property disclosures, most common exclusions are new construction, homes that have never been lived in, foreclosures, and any rent-to-own scenarios. They are excluded from the RPOs, from the residential property disclosures. When it comes to the mineral oil and gas rights, The mineral and gas right is required for transfers or conveyance of properties involving new construction, lease with an option where the lessee occupies the property, and it's transfer and transfers where both parties agree that the RPOS is not provided. Okay. Another common disclosure today is the lead-based paint. So if it's built prior to 1978, make sure we are including that disclosure to the seller, and that the seller signs it and it's provided to potential buyers. Okay. We have gotten through all of the seller's forms and information there. Tomorrow, we will be talking about the buyer side and going through all of the buyer side information. Do we have any questions about any of the information and things we have discussed today? All right. Well, if not, we're finishing up early. It's 11:54. If no questions, guess what we're gonna do? I'm gonna see you back here tomorrow at 10 o'clock. If you have any questions or comments and you want to hang around and ask them, feel free. Otherwise, I'm all done. So thank you all for joining us.
You're gonna send us some information. Do you need our emails now?
Yes. Thank you, Plumber. Thank you. Yes, I want to send you all the package. And what's in the package, a sample copy of the forms that I have filled out here, so you can have that. I'm also going to include the guidelines as well, because there are guidelines for those. Okay. Thank you all for being here. Yep, just put your email right there in the chat and I'm going to get it and get it out to you.
Thank you, Teresa. This was really valuable.
Awesome. Thank you, Ethiel, and thank you all for joining me. Hope we can all learn. Thank you. So don't forget to put your email in the chat so I can get this packet out to you. Have a great day, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, camera. All right. What
Okay.
is the name for the counter offer for like what's the name for the counter offer document inside of DocuSign?
So when you say counter offer document, what's the scenario?
I received an offer in on a property and my clients, they like everything on it except for the price. They want to submit a formal counter offer to it, just changing the price.
Okay, so that can be done. Don't necessarily have to have a formal document for that. I don't know. I don't even think there's a counter offer form. There could be, I don't recall
I
one.
couldn't find one.
I
Yeah.
was going to say, I don't recall one. So what it can be verbal. The negotiation can be verbal. The seller can even do this. The seller can actually go, if they like all the terms except for the price, they can go ahead and sign, initial. You can actually strike through that price and give the price back. Have your sellers initial it and send it back to the buyer. And if the buyer is okay with that, all they need to do is initial and date that change. You don't even have to do that. You can just do it orally and negotiate there, because here's the thing. Any change to an offer is a counter offer. So even if your seller signs it and initials that change, it's still not a contract until that buyer signs it. So it can be verbal until there's some final agreed upon term, until that term is agreed upon. Now, I will say this, there is a form that's called a response to buyer's offer.
Mhm.
That is not a counter offer. What it is a rejection of this buyer's offer and the seller saying, we will consider this instead. That says to the buyer, we reject, we're not accepting this. We're letting you know what we will consider. And if you send us an offer with that, then we're more likely to accept. So I just want to be clear that it's called a response to buyer's offer. It's not a counter, but just a rejection, and we'll consider this.
Yeah, I think I downloaded that one because that's the one I could find. So which one would you personally use if it were you and you were just changing the price?
Yeah, if I was just changing the price, then I would communicate to the buyer's agent. Seller is agreeable to all terms except for sales price. They are countering with 450 instead. And it would just simply be an email that I would do, documenting it. And when I say verbal, that's what I mean. Verbal in addition to in writing, because you always want a paper trail.
Gotcha.
Yeah, always want to be able to document that you communicated that back.
Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome. You're
Ask
welcome.
another question.
Absolutely.
This one's fun. This one's fun because it's probably not something you've heard 1,000 times. I have a customer that has a property in Chapel Hill, and
Okay.
it's a large property.
Okay.
Like, not that that matters, but it matters because what they did to it. Anyway, so they subdivided it themselves
Okay.
with licensed contractors, but it was unpermitted to make it a 4-unit multifamily.
Okay.
And so it is still zoned as single family and the work is not permitted. And I was wondering, I want to do a listing presentation for them and I want to make sure I'm providing the accurate information. This does still have to be marketed as a single family residential, correct?
Yeah, so whatever the county says, you want to go with that. Yes, yes.
And how do I provide an accurate CMA? Because it is in fact 4 separate units, but it's still listed as one house, but it's not functional as one house anymore.
Oh, okay, so it's kind of like a quad. Is that
Yeah,
what?
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, they literally
So-
split it into 4 sections and it's fully functional multifamily units.
Okay, okay. I would recommend doing a CMA a couple different ways. I would look for regular residential properties that are most likely like it. And what I mean with square footage, the size, acres, and all of that. I would prepare that and have that as one kind of set of CMA. Then I would look for some quads out there and just see if there are any quads out there and compare the two. So I will look for some properties that's quad or most similar to it in that aspect, and run a CMA, a comparison both ways.
And then would you average them out?
Well, I would first out, yeah, sort of, yes. See what each one is saying, and if they're close or similar, that'd be great. The thing of it is that the biggest thing is what the county is saying. If the county is saying it's one, unit, you just want to be able to highlight the uniqueness of it. So, and market it that way. So I would really look to see what both say. Absolutely.
So in the listing description for the public remarks, you'd say something along the lines of single family residential that has been split into a 4-unit multifamily, but is still zoned as single family residential can use as multiple units.
Yes, I would say something to that effect. And I would actually, just as a courtesy, download that property card and upload it into MLS if I possibly could, just to have the proof of that. Yeah, I would definitely say something to that effect.
And as for the unpermitted work, I would just put that in the agent remarks.
Mhm,
Okay.
That is correct. Yep.
Perfect. Now I know what to tell her, and knowing that I'm being 100% honest.
Yep.
Yes.
Exactly. That's interesting. I had a similar question this morning about a property. I'm like, I always go with what the county says, because as an agent, that's what we want to go with what the county says, because we want to make sure we're disclosing everything and we're accurate.
That's what I said when she originally asked. I was like, what you do with the property when you own it is your choice, as long as it doesn't violate the law, but it doesn't change its eyes in the state or the county.
There
In
you
the
go.
county.
I
Okay.
like it. I like it, Rebecca. Love it.
Perfect. Thank
Yep.
you so much. I really appreciate your help.
Thank you. Have an awesome day. Thank you for
Thanks,
being here. Hope to see you tomorrow.
See you then.
Okay. Bye-bye.